last talk of the workshop. I'm very happy to introduce Lois Tullo. She's an expert in the area of risk, finance, compliance, and corporate governance. As Chief Risk Officer, she is responsible for financial oversight and regulatory compliance. She has over 30 years of business experience spanning financial services, technology, cryptocurrency, telecommunications, strategy consulting, raising venture capital, and natural resources. Lois is also teaching financial services and risk management at the executive, MBA, and undergraduate levels at the School of Business at York University. Previously, she was Chief Financial Officer of CBDC Finance, responsible for finance, accounting, HR, and interim risk management. Lois will talk about the 5 futures of currency: Fiat versus CBDC, stablecoins, and crypto. Lois, please go ahead.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Chris. I'm just going to share my screen here. All right, can everyone see that?
Yes.
All right. So before we get started, I just want to have you just think about 10 years in the future. It was great to have Sam go before me because he sort of brought you along to a 5-year view. But I really want you to think about like a 10-year view. And you know, you might have heard that question, you know, when you're at graduation or something, where you're going to be in 10 years. And at that time, it seemed like so far in the future. But, you know, as you get a little older and you look back, it's like it's gone by in the twinkling of an eye. And that's what we're going to spend this short time together looking at. We also may not have traveled as much. So I'm going to take you on a little trip before we go. And we're going to go to Davos. And the little town of Davos is on the side of a mountain, and we're there in the winter, and it is snowing, and the snowpack is building up on the side of the mountain, continues to snow, the wind is blowing, the temperature is dropping, and oh, I'm sorry to say that we have been wiped out in the town of Davos. But why do I take you here to get wiped out? Well, it's to think about, why do things happen? And, you know, was it the last snowflake that fell? Or was it the wind, or the height of the snowpack, or the elevation of the mountain? But when we look at it, it's really all of those things put together. And when we look into the future, that's how I want you to think about things, not in isolation, but how does the interconnectivity of those things happen? And there's something called a complex adaptive system. And that's really where, you know, sort of all of these heterogeneous agents work together to cause the outcome. And it's really not one or the other, but it's the intersection of those. And just to get a fuller understanding. Okay, so what are we going to talk about today? Well, we're going to look at the future of currencies and payments and what it'll look like in 10 years, what the risks and trends of those most influential will shape the future, early warning signals, implications for your organization, and, you know, what you and your organization can actually do. So the first question is, says who? You know, just Lois Tullo? Not so much. So the lead up to this, I started the first interview May a year ago, and asking over 100 really smart folks about, you know, what are the most important risks and trends that is going to shape the future, and, you know, what is this potentially going to look like? And, you know, from a global set of experts, also a wide cross-section of industry and academic and regulators and government. So I really have them to thank for this research. We're going to start at the current state, and I put this up just basically to show that the world that we live in is still fairly siloed when it comes to currency. And when you think about currency, really in 2 forms, either accounts in circulation, mainly through financial institutions, and the other in the form of cash or fiat. Just to give you some data of what's happened over the last couple of years, well, we've seen a huge increase in the money supply. So what does that look like? In the UK, 1.6 trillion to 2.4 trillion. In Germany, 2 trillion to 3 trillion. In Canada, 0.9 to 1.4 trillion. And in the US, basically 1 trillion to 24 trillion. So we've really seen that increase, and that quantitative easing or printing of money has a huge impact on the underlying trust of currency, and that's going to play into the future. On the right-hand side, we've seen a lot of recent unfortunate events, and that's played out in currency as well. Here we've got the US dollar and the Russian ruble. And early in my teaching career, we saw that go from 1 to 5 to 1 to 25 when we saw the default of Russian debt early 1990s. That has gone up through the takeover of Crimea, up to 1 to 60, up to 1 to 80. We saw it recently jump up to 1 to 120. And then just today I checked and it's back down to 1 to 168. So, and we're going to see a lot of those implications sort of through sanctions and the removal of SWIFT of Europe, but we're going to talk about that in a little bit. Oh, sorry, this one. Credit cards. What's going on in the credit card industry? Well, we've seen the market value grow, 138 billion, projected to grow to 263 by 228. So lots of growth projected in that area. A lot of growth in e-wallets, and we can't really say the value that's going through e-wallets, but we can show the payments on certain platforms. So Zelle, 460 billion, Venmo, 230 billion. And the predictions that, 73% of the transactions were actually going through e-wallets. So we've seen some change already. Crypto, we heard from our previous speakers, is really increasing, and the network capabilities of crypto rising, capping out at 3 trillion, back down to about 1.8 right now. And we've also seen the adoption as crypto as legal currency. El Salvador was the first one to start us off on that. Just showing, just sort of what are some of the top cryptos, and just the market caps and adoption values that we're seeing. Appeal of digital assets to institutional investors. And the reason I talk about this is because as we look forward to the futures, it is going to be one of the warning signals, is how institutional investors move into this space. So why do they care? Well, or uncorrelated to some of the other assets, although we have seen some correlation as the market declined. Innovative tech play, upside, decentralized, free from government interventions in some cases. Definitely arbitrage opportunities, censorship resistant. So that sort of gives you a basics. We've also seen the stablecoin market increase, 185 billion. And if we look at underlying trade, the stablecoin environment is going to have a big influence in the DeFi market. Central bank digital currency, another alternative, and launched as well as piloted. The largest pilot that we've seen, China's trial, now has 261 million users, has over 110 million merchants signed up, and has over 15 billion in actual trading. So we've seen a lot of that. We have seen Bahamas, Marshall Islands, Jamaica, Sweden, Nigeria launch their own central bank digital currency. So we're really moving along in that. So that just gives you a bit of the data and where we are. Where I'm going to go now is sort of looking at the risks and trends that are going to shape those future 10 years. So the first one is really economic, and I want to start with that debt clock, and you see that up at the corner, global debt in the trillions of dollars. Another big driver is down on the right-hand side. You see the global wealth pyramid, and really the disparity of income and wealth, and really the shift as governments go into debt, where that power has gone. And if you look at the map down on the bottom left-hand side, you really see that, where that wealth is sitting globally. Along with that, we're seeing inflation, interest rate increases. So that has a lot of change and a lot of trepidation going on. The next one, of course, is technology and cyber dependence. We've seen a lot of that through, the last 2 years as people have been working from home, but also down along the bottom, machine learning, Internet of Things, automated vehicles, distributed energy, technology in our bodies. That's going to have a big influence. Virtual reality tied to the metaverse and drones and Reeboks. Up on the top hand side, if I had more time, I'd take you through to that's the real-time cyber attacks. And we have seen a lot of cyber attacks within the digital asset space. And unless that's figured out, that's going to produce a lot of directionality, as well as, the adverse effects of technology. And I think we're about to see those play out as well as we see the interaction. Just one more sort of big sort of technology thing is really the movement from Web 2 to Web 3. And as we move from a web of information to a web of value, and sort of that identification of ownership is going to be a big driver over the next 10 years. Societal, what have we seen? Well, the spread of viral disease. Down on the left-hand side, the number of cases, unfortunately not out of the woods yet. We are hoping that sort of with vaccines, that is going to, sort of get back to the new normal. But, the World Health Organization has said that we are in for an era of pandemics. Populism, up on the right-hand side of the globe, and that is just a smattering of the protests that are going on around the world. Unfortunately, what we're seeing is food scarcity, and I'm just going to look at the chat. I'd be more interested to see the rebel versus hybrid play out. I will get back to that when we look at that. Urbanization definitely driving the adoption of different types of currencies. And if we look at that sort of interaction with the profound social instability, we're seeing that mainly through urban centers. Geopolitical. Interstate conflict. Well, I've highlighted a couple places on the map. We're seeing Russia and Ukraine play out, and this has really had a huge impact on currency. We've seen sanctions. We've seen a lot of the Russian banks removed from SWIFT, and this is providing a lot of opportunities to the central bank digital currency, the EU yuan, to shift payments. So we're gonna look at that, how that might play out, as well as the rest of the world is focused on Russia and Ukraine. What is happening or potentially could happen with China, the South Sea, and Taiwan. Other things that have happened: increases in national settlements. We've seen that even before COVID, with divides within the US, within a lot of the Central European countries. Changing landscape of international governance, the IMF, the UN, NATO, before the Russia-Ukraine conflict. a lot of those were really losing governance power. We have seen a lot of coming together in recent months, but yet to be seen on that. Lastly, but not least, environmental. I grew up in Saskatchewan. For those of you who don't know that, 2 months of 40 below. I grew up in a time when climate change was called global warming, and it meant that it was going to be 2 degrees warmer in winter. Well, if you look at the middle chart, it's not just about increasing temperatures, it's about increasing variance in those temperatures. So you've got more hot and more cold, which then causes over on the right-hand side, increased CO2 levels, heat, fire, flooding, drought. And then why is it getting cold in Canada in winter, colder? Well, because the ice packs are melting, and we're seeing the jet stream go slower. And when the jet stream goes slower, the cold air moves down from the ice packs. So over on the left-hand side, projections, definitely uncertain heat projections. And from everything that the powers that be are projecting, it does not look like we're going to make the targets that have been put out to address this. So where does that bring us to? Well, we've got the current siloed state, really to a blended future, and going to go through a couple of 5 different plausible states of the future. So the first one, regulatory centralization. And in 3032, what we see is that most central banks and central governments have banned cryptocurrency. Central bank digital currency has been adopted. Currently, we've got about 14, 15 billion trading in central bank digital currency through the Belt Road and through the interaction with Russia. We see that retail payments have gone up to 24 trillion, and about 85% of that retail payments are now transacted in central bank digital currency. This is also, if we look at how China has brought on central bank digital currency, it has been with central bank deposits, and the huge implication for other countries is that has pressed them to issue their central bank digital currencies also with a central bank deposit methodology, not the foundation of choice. The foundation of choice from other central bank digital, or from other central banks, has been to issue central bank digital currency through the existing banking system, so that we don't see a shift of retail deposits to central bank deposits. However, under this scenario, what we see is that shift, and what that drives the current banks to is to wholesale funding. And that has a transformational shift in what we're going to see 10 years from now. So that's number one. And number 2 is the decentralized metaverse. And what we see here is we see DeFi for finance and the metaverse for work, play, education, and virtual platforms for payment and crypto, and stable coins issued by organizations from a consolidation of the largest financial, technological, and telecommunications providers. In an era of pandemics that continue to fuel integrated securities and crypto exchanges, we're seeing the adoption of cryptocurrency has shifted us away from transactions at traditional banks and exchanges to DeFi platforms and distributed autonomous organizations, or DAOs. DAOs are now the social organizations that embed rules by integrating them into transparent computer programs and under the control of their organization's members. And we had Saul mentioned that in the previous talk, that social media is really driving people into online groups that they have a connection with, and that's what we're going to see in this online metaverse. In 2030, we also see Uniswap is the largest DeFi platform, and they are also going to be the author of regulations that protect the development of DeFi and of DAO makers. Web3, digitization, and smart augmented reality lenses have enabled a more user-friendly DeFi and non-fungible tokens. And they have moved our work, education, and socialization into the metaverse. Now, I know for myself, I'm not there yet. I've been in the metaverse, and well, you know, it's not there yet. But I do believe that under a scenario, it might be. Cryptocurrency, stablecoins, and central bank digital currency work in tandem in the metaverse, and regulation works in harmony with cryptocurrency. So that's state number 2. Number 3 is a divided world. And if you look at where sort of different geopolitical regions are today, what this scenario really plays out is a continuation of where they are today. And you know, if we start with Asia, led by China, followed up closely by India, they're leading the world of digital payments and the acceptance of the China yuan. The yuan is minted, transactions held and burned by the People's Bank of China. The yuan is now accepted within the Belt and Road countries, cross-borders payments, and the global trade and reserve currency is now split predominantly between the US central bank digital currency, China's central bank yuan, India's digital rupee, with the remainder being split between the euro and developing countries' central bank digital currencies. So we really see China leading the way. In North America and Europe, well, central bank digital currencies are distributed through an updated banking infrastructure. There's an updated debit, credit, and e-wallet system that's competing for dominance with big tech, stablecoins, and DeFi cryptocurrencies. The US is fighting to maintain as much control on the global reserve and trade currencies. And with only a fraction of this dominance left, the US dollar has devalued, and as have other high debt nations, including Britain, Canada, France, Italy, Japan, and Spain. So not looking so good for us in North America. Down in Latin America, they have embraced cryptocurrency. Cryptocurrency is now legal tender in most Latin American countries from the early adoption by El Salvador, followed by Mexico. This will be the tipping point for Latin America and cryptocurrency. Latin American banks were quick to follow suit and invest heavily in crypto exchanges, as well as trade coins, as proof of work has been augmented with Bitcoin 2.0 and with proof of stake trading. Africa, stablecoins are the major payment in Africa, minted by large telecoms providers, facilitated by their already existing e-wallet infrastructure. There's regulatory arbitrage through the developing African countries that have accepted cryptocurrencies, and they're starting with Bitcoin for over a decade. And there is no real dominant coin throughout the region, but there are dominant coins by country. So this is kind of where I'm leaning towards. Scenario number 4. Well, this is not happiness for anybody in the world. We see infrastructure failure and a revision to, cash, checking, maybe a bit of credit cards that are able to, sort of provide backing for transactions. So what's the first one that we see? Well, war and cyber attacks, living in a time of broad financial and global geopolitical instability, resulting in waves of cyber attacks and interstate conflict that have shut down systems, stolen funds, data, resulting in unprecedented economic costs. And I could go on for a long time, but that's just a touch of the iceberg. The next one is extreme weather events, and hoping that this is not the way of the future. But if we think about the efforts to stem climate change have failed 10 years out. Global emissions have rose to 55 gigatons of CO2 emissions in 2032. Flooding across continents due to melting in Arctic permafrost have risen ocean levels, and flooding has knocked out satellites, telecommunications infrastructure, which has brought the global financial systems to its knees. Markets are closed, supply chains are broken, global payments are operating on manual backups with a fraction of the near-field 5G networks that are not reliant upon broadband communications. Water may be the collateral for the reserve currency in the futures. Shifting geopoliticals have-not countries based on availability of fresh water. So at least we have one thing going for us in Canada. And then, sort of further out in the future is the quantum potential and, opportunities and threats. The power grid may have been shut down by state-sponsored quantum computers cracking the RSA public key crypto systems. Mayhem erupted in the winter of 2021 in Texas was just a foreshadowing of the glimpse of devastation that is resulting from the power grid being taken offline. Ubiquitous fiber connected developed through the 2020s made the global system particularly vulnerable to attacks. So we're going to see manual backup processes providing minimum grid generated power, analog telecommunications, and 5G offline computing. For anyone, quantum safe computing is going to be really important to enable the rise and adoption of biomoney. And that's the link to our last one, biodiversity, and really looking, sort of just as cryptocurrency was a new phenomena, so will biomoney be. And, looking at many forms of currency augmented today by, facial recognition, iris, fingerprint identification. Our bio will be our wallet, and paying will evolve for fingerprints, voice, face, vein print, iris, DNA to body scans, as well as one thing called polygenic risk scores. And what that is it provides identification based upon risk stratification of thousands of different genomic variants. And how they get that data is, see your Fitbit. Well, we're all going to have health monitors, and that will give us our bio identification. And that's what we're going to be using for payments. As we see this sort of moving to the forefront, that's going to bring on, trusted verification system and mutual authentication between service providers and their customers. Ending with, I think about spending my money and it's gone. So what are the implications of this? Well, regulatory centralization, well, privacy, loss to efficiency, and central governments control every facet of society through total transparency of central bank digital currency. Differ from electronic transactions through banking could give direct claim on central banks and physical cash. This leads to disintermediation of financial institutions, changing what deposit funding and leading to wholesale deposit methods for liquidity. Also, digital currencies, if widely adopted, would affect the bank funding model, product pricing, competitive positions, and customer relations. Downward pressure on cash management, as well as digital currencies could be subject to cybersecurity breaches. So huge implications for the way our banks are set up today. Implications of the DeFi metaverse. Bitcoin, some cryptocurrencies enable people to complete transactions pseudonymically. So that means using only digital identities and without the intervention of a trusted party, such as central banks, validated through computer algorithms. So a lot more autonomy, but that has a lot of other implications. Shift in world trade currencies away from the US dollar, shift in macroeconomics, the wealth creation that these different cryptocurrencies and NFT drops that we're seeing already, with a tip of the iceberg, the board yacht community saw the rise and fall of 600 million drop just over a weekend. Difficulty with scalability. We've got Visa 65,000 transactions per second. So we're going to have to see a movement to proof of stake and proof of space through the Chia network. Digital currencies, lots of cyber hacks and may fall into the wrong hands. And along with that comes price volatility and, potentially a whole lot of crypto bubbles along those 10 years. The divided world. Well, digital currency further separates world trade, and we are moving to a regionalized economy already. We have seen third-party breaks in the supply chain, and if we see this continuing, that is just going to accentuate that supply chain difficulty. More cyber breaches, more price volatility, and lack of inherent value, as well as potential bubble breaches, and regulatory arbitrage leading to digital adoption, lots of arbitrage opportunities across different marketplaces. Oh, the fat tail infrastructure. Failure of the payment system is not out of the plausible future. The digital divide gap widens under any of these fat tail scenarios because the wealthy have backup generators and underground bunkers, food and water accessibility. A technological holocaust is not out of reach. Control of digital currency, again, cyber breaches, and water may be the new reserve currency enabled through tokenization of water reserves. Biodiversity, well, bioprivacy controlled by the state. I don't think anybody wants to see that go there. Divide over regulation between countries. And in the shorter term, biodata is stored only in individual countries, and we've seen that started to be played out already. We need permission for sharing across those countries and making international business more challenging. Movements between countries significantly controlled or limited through bioidentification. So what's the early warning system? So these are scenarios, and when you look at scenarios, you want to, sort of bring forecasting into the scenario analysis to give some directionality on, which scenario are we going to? So identification of some of those early warning signals. By 2025, 10 countries have launched their central bank digital currency, and we're definitely on the way there. A big one is going to be India launching their central bank digital currency with a valuation of over 10 billion adoption. China's yuan has replaced 50% of the value of US dollar transactions as international trade currencies for transactions between China and the Belt Road by 2027. I did my original thesis back in 1993 on joint ventures in China, and I think that they are going to be leading the way on this. Russia's banned permanently from SWIFT by 2024. Oil purchase transactions are priced in yuan by 2024. I just saw over the weekend that China is scooping up low-priced oil already. The DeFi metaverse, how is this going to happen? Well, the U.S. Securities Exchange, SEC, declares Bitcoin not a security by 2022. Well, that already happened. U.S. inflation hits 10% by 2023. Well, we're well on our way. DeFi transactions values exceed 1 billion by 2024. Private stablecoins receive regulatory approval in the US, Europe, or Britain by 2024. Pension funds and sovereign wealth funds receive regulatory approval. Well, we're seeing this playing out right now. Over the past, a week ago, Fidelity announced that 20% of your 401k could be in Bitcoin. Now that is being debated, but it's definitely moving in this direction. 2024, 25% of people will spend 1 hour or more in the metaverse per day. Well, if you live in my household, at least 2 of my adult children spend way more than 1 hour there. So on average, I think we are well on our way. 2024, 30% of countries will have at least one product in the metaverse. And, there's not great adoption yet, but if we see the number of companies that are there, we are well on our way to this. 2024 shipments of VR headsets will outpace gaming consoles. We're on our way to that already as well. Bitcoin, including in the currency index, well, we're seeing a lot of reporting on that. Value of stablecoin transactions exceed 1 trillion. G20 countries default on their sovereign debt. I hope that doesn't happen. Although, I did not see this happening soon, but Russia is on the edge, and it did default once before. So we may see that happen. Ethereum moves from proof of work to proof of stake. They've said they're moving to Ethereum 2.0, which causes gas prices to fall by 90%, transaction process speeds to increase to 60,000 transactions per second by 2025. And I really think this can happen. They just need the governance really to move forward on this. Metaverse platforms achieve interoperability between major platforms by 2025, and the value of metaverse grows to 800 billion by 2024. I've only got a certain amount of time, so I'm going to rush through this, and then hopefully we'll have some time for discussion at the end. What does a divided world look like? What are some early warning systems? Well, China's CBDC has been launched in all China's cities by over 1 million people by 2024. 3 Middle East countries adopt the e-yuan for oil trade. by 2024, and India has launched a CBDC by 2024. In North America, Europe, Australia, the UN does not, or the United States has not launched their central bank digital currency pilot that has adopted over 1 million wallets by 2025. The EU does not have a central bank digital currency pilot that's been adopted by 1 million by 2025, and 2 major debit credit card companies accept payment in stablecoins and cryptocurrencies in major cities in the US and Europe by 2025. And I think that is right around the corner. In South America, by 2027, 15 countries in South America have adopted Bitcoin as legal tender. Mexico and Brazil have adopted Bitcoin as legal tender by 2025. African telcos expand their mobile payment system to include the issuance of their own stablecoin by 2025, and 5 of the largest African countries do not adopt the use of central bank digital currency yuan by 2025. I think that's a real key thing to not have it go to that scenario in Africa. Infrastructure failure, nuclear accident as a result of war or attack by 2025. Really hoping that's not a case. War spreads outside of Ukraine by 2023. 30% or more of international payment rails are destroyed by war or cyber attack by 2025. 50% or more of national and international payment rails are shut down by cyber attack by 2030. Really hoping not for this scenario. Extreme weather events. So flooding has washed out transmission rails in 30% of global networks by 2027. Forest fires have destroyed communication lines between cities, and over 50 million people are affected by 2025. Forest fires have destroyed 1 major city of over 1 million people by 2027, and sea levels have risen by 5 centimeters by 2027. Again, really hoping for this not to happen. Quantum potential, well, huge shifts happening in quantum. Quantum application models adoption by 1 financial institution by 2025. Lots of trials going on right now. Quantum supremacy of 1,000 qubits by 2028, and decryption of the RSA cryptography by 2030. I think by 2030, we will see some movement in this space. The farthest one on the fat tail is, biomoney, but interesting things happening on this front. Brain machine interface trials progress to payments by 2027. Digital identity trials move into application for 5 countries, and central bank digital currency forced burning by 1 central bank that has adopted central bank digital currency as legal tender by 2028. So lots of interesting things happening on the biomoney. So what are the conclusions out of this? Well, leaders of financial institutions have to be prepared for all scenarios. The continued adoption and expansion of digital currencies will continue. That is not an unknown. The future leaders are those that have already participated in space or prioritize catching up by launching joint initiatives or acquiring participants in the digital asset space. If you have not started, or you are not looking to immediately start in this space, you are already behind. Investing in emerging technologies, it's not just about digital assets, but it's about blockchain, cloud, AI, 5G, biohardware software, in-house and through academia and industry partnerships, because it is the synergy of these underlying technologies that is going to move us to this new future. Cybersecurity must continue to be a joint effort between financial players, government, and infrastructure providers. This cannot be understated. And lastly, regulation and compliance have and will continue to set the limits on adoption of mainstream digital assets, and of which financial institutions must take the lead or be left behind. And I've raced through it. Hopefully we've got some questions, comments. The other thing that I'm really looking to this community for is a lot of this research right now is qualitative, and I am looking to partner with the brilliant minds that I have heard from over the last 2 days on the quantitative analysis of where this is going.
Thank you very much for this forward-looking talk.